So when we started this conversation about breaking good news, we've been talking about, the idea was that we have these breaking news and we hear all these traumatic stories and everything is traumatic. Well, when we started this conversation, I knew I wanted to end with the topic of today, talking about human trafficking. But what I realized as I've studied and I've worked through this is that I knew little about it. And so today I think makes it even more important for us to listen and hear what is going to be shared. Pope Francis once said, one of the most troubling of those open wounds in the world is the trade in human beings, a modern form of slavery. It violates the God-given dignity of so many of our brothers and sisters and constitutes a true crime against humanity. So you might be thinking, what does this have to do with us? We're here in Port Orange and everything seems fine. The problem is we've been told that human trafficking is a bigger problem somewhere else. It's not really here. But it is also something that is in our community. And as you'll see today, it's literally right down the street. Or it may even be in our midst. One of the things that I think is kind of cool is that when we put this together, I didn't realize that our youth would spend, by the way, you're wondering why none of the youth are here. They were up till 3 in the morning at Rock the Universe over in Universal Studios, except for one. All right, there are two. Two of them from last night. Good job. And Tony, who slept upstairs. And so if they nod off, don't take it personal. It's nothing to it. But that they were doing something that this church is known for, and that is reaching out to our youth. And how perfect when we understand this topic for today. We have to talk about it. We have to open our eyes. We have to be aware of it. And even as I approach the subject, I learned so much more by what I have to share through a video today. Interfaith Toolkit on Human Trafficking, published in January of last year, said of the more than 40 million victims of human trafficking globally, at least 10 million are children. And in the United States, it is 46 children every day are brought into human trafficking. We'll hear a few figures about Volusia County later on, but just to give you an idea that it is right here and in the midst of where we are. And it's about this idea of objectifying human life. Reverend Martin Luther King once said, we must rapidly begin with the shift from thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers and profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, then the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. When he talked about this idea of what objectifying the human being is like, it was 1957. But we did not heed the call of this prophet. And this problem is more prevalent today than ever. That's why we need to talk about it and be a part of it. Unfortunately, we need to be the ones that bring the good news of Jesus Christ, even in a tough subject like this. Through ignorance or complacency or maybe a little of both, we've missed it. We've missed what's right under our eyes and the danger that's on our streets. Trafficking is here at our doorstep, and we are unaware. And this is slavery. Slavery in 2020. Can you imagine? Today, what we're going to do is we're going to watch a short portion of the video documentary Chosen. And at the end of that, we're going to have a panel of some people who've worked in this area talk about what we can do and what's out there and find out as much as we can along the way. But in the meantime, watch this video with me called Chosen.
We're working with what we have. And I was like, what do we have? And she's like, your body.
I didn't know about sex trafficking until I was in the middle of it.
After a while, you just kind of get used to it. Like, everything that goes around just doesn't seem out of ordinary to you.
We really believed that she was getting ready to be sold.
So, Brianna, how old are you?
500 kids take me to the house. Let me join in.
Everybody's missing kids.
I think the most common way we've seen these traffickers or pimps get involved in these girls' lives is they pretend to be an older boyfriend. And really, again, we're talking about young girls that could be 12, 13, 14 years old, and perhaps they've never had a boyfriend. So to have this older male come into their life who's pretty charming, who's pretty charismatic, and suddenly paying attention to them like they've never had it before, offering to buy them things, offering to take them to dinner, to movies, have their hair done, their nails done, a tanning salon. This connection's made, and these young girls actually fall in love with these guys and believe that this guy loves them back. And then one day he asks for something, and even though she doesn't want to do it, she's so worried about losing him that she will. And once he's had her do it once, he pretty much can control her from then on through shame, through drugs, through threats about family or physical beatings. But the reality is it can be any girl. And we've learned that through experience, unfortunately, that girls from good homes, girls that have good grades, do all the right things, can still be exposed to this. The 17-year-old girl that I'm familiar with, her name is Brianna. And Brianna comes from a small town, was an A student, an athlete, volunteered in her community, was a cheerleader, and attended college while going to high school. And she came into my life through a phone call I received on a Saturday night.
My name's Brianna, and I didn't know about sex trafficking until I was in the middle of it. I'm sure you're like me, where you think that sex trafficking wouldn't affect your life, but I'll tell you my story. I was from a small town and just really enjoyed being a part of the community. When I was in high school, I actually took college courses because I knew that I wanted to be a nurse. I was really excited about getting my education started, and I knew that I could really focus myself while I was in high school to get those A's I needed in college. I was waitressing and just doing a good job. I was always really friendly and would have conversations with my customers. What I didn't realize was that one of my customers, he was gathering information about me through our innocent conversations, where I was going to school, what my family was like, what I wanted to be. He was gathering information about me to eventually use it against me. I was just at work one evening, and some guys came in, and they were really cool. One, his name was Nick, and he was like 24. He played football at a university. He was tall and blonde, and he was super funny. We were just like laughing the entire time that he was having his meal. He told me that he was from Seattle, which I thought was just a coincidence. And I told him that, wow, I want to move there. And we were just flirting the whole time, and he was telling me how beautiful I am and making me feel good about myself. At the end of the conversation with Nick, he gave me his phone number, and we talked for quite a bit of time. I made a choice that night, but I found out that they actually had chosen me. When I decided to go up and hang out with Nick in Seattle, I couldn't tell my parents because they wouldn't let me. So since he was older, I had to make a lie to get around my parents. So I told them that I was going to hang out with my girlfriend for the day. When I got to Seattle, I pulled up to a gorgeous house. It was Victorian style and it had a lake view. I was blown away. I didn't realize that when I was meeting his friends, they were actually shopping me. And they were seeing if they wanted to buy me or if they knew somebody that might want to buy me. So I didn't realize that his friends were traffickers too. And he was so smooth and came off so sincere and genuine. When I asked him how am I gonna get a job, what am I gonna do? He said, you could waitress, you're good at that. I saw you waitressing, you're good at that. But how much do you usually make in a night? And I told him that I usually make about $85. He told me to put a 0 on that 85, and that's how much I could bring in a night with a job that he knew of. He told me that his ex-girlfriend was a dancer and that it was really easy and that I could probably do it. And for a minute I considered dancing. I was thinking, well, probably isn't that bad. And then he said, okay, let's go to the strip club. I felt like if I didn't go to the strip club with him that he would look at me as just a child, as a kid. Here I am, I'm 18. I can go into a strip club at this point. And it was kind of like, if you don't, then you're not an adult. That's how I felt. The strip club was just really loud and dark. It was gross and it smelled. It didn't feel very comfortable, and it's like everything has this like sticky look to it. You don't really want to touch anything because everything's got germs on it. I felt kind of gross that I was even in there. I was only in the club for 2 nights dancing, but in that time frame, a lot of guys wanted to take me home, and one guy, he offered me $1,000 for an hour, and I couldn't believe it. So me and Nick talked about going to Arizona, and we both decided that I needed to return my dad's car. On my way to return my dad's car, I was calling friends to help me move out and get the car returned and then get me back up to Seattle. So the only friend that offered to help was my ex-boyfriend, and his name was Evan. I was surprised that he was going to help, but we just kept a really close relationship. We were good friends still. So when I got to his house, though, he was asking me so many questions. Evan was so concerned about where did they get all this money and why aren't they working. He was asking just these questions, and I was starting to realize that he didn't really want to help me. And then I realized that he was trying to talk me out of going to Arizona and moving out. And so I wanted to go. I wanted to leave. So on my way of walking out of Evan's door, his parents were there. I felt like Evan betrayed me because he called his parents and my parents to try to help convince me not to go to Arizona and not to move out. And here I am, given all these opportunities to go to school in Seattle. I felt like it was a dream come true. I was going to Arizona for winter break, and they all didn't see it. I felt like my family and Evan They wanted to keep me just in this little bubble, and that I'm just a child and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I was upset. I was really mad at Evan. I felt like he completely was ruining our friendship. He had lost my trust. And a woman walked into the room and introduced herself. Her name was Linda Smith, and she was a specialist in getting girls to recognize and flee from human trafficking. After a long conversation with Linda, I started realizing and recognizing that I was being groomed for trafficking, that I was in the middle of the process, and that it was almost too late. I thought Nick was the good guy and Evan was the bad guy, but now I realized he saved my life. Nick was grooming me to be trafficked.
Powerful video, amen? So I wanted to introduce, first of all, Christy Gillis, a member of our church, and she's with the Children's Home Society of Florida and has worked with this situation quite a bit over in her time there. And also to introduce Jesus Martin, who is a special agent with Homeland Security. I'm going to ask them a few questions and just to kind of get a feel for what's going on in our community. So first of all, just tell me, who is vulnerable?
Any child that has comes from a broken home, or we talk about LGBTQI youth, it can be a boys, males or females. Any sort of youth that has any sort of vulnerability makes them more susceptible to get involved in trafficking.
Okay.
And it could be any age. I mean, we've seen children from 12 to 17 until they turn 18. And adults actually, we deal with a lot of adults that are trafficked. A lot of it starts when they're young, but we don't encounter them until they're in adulthood. And it's very difficult at that point because it's been ingrained in them for so long to get them out of that life and recognize what's going on, and that the situation they're in is a terrible situation. It becomes a norm for them, so it's very difficult to bring somebody out of it at that point.
Yeah, so in the video they were talking, it was somewhere far away. It was over in Seattle. It's nice for us to think it's over there. Can it happen in our area?
Absolutely. You were saying, I work for Children's Home Society, and I work here in our community. I actually have some numbers. Bear with me. I have old eyes. And these are numbers that are reported to the Department of Children and Families, who can also investigate trafficking. So in 2015-16 in Volusia County, there were 34 cases that were reported in to DCF. 7 of those were verified. That gives a 20% verification rate in 2016-17. There were 41 cases called in. 14 were verified with a 34% verification rate. 2017-18, there were 52 cases and 13 were verified by Department of Children and Families. One of the things about Department of Children and Families, the perpetrator can be unknown. So, but that's someone that called in with concern about human trafficking for youth in our area.
And those are just local numbers. If you think of the Central Florida region, if you think of the entire state and the nation, numbers are exponentially greater. Florida ranks as number 3 in reports of human trafficking or calls of human trafficking, the human trafficking hotline in the nation. Number 3 state in the nation. One of the big reasons why the numbers here are so high in the reports are two reasons: the tourism industry and agriculture. Both are big factors are big reasons why those enterprises operate in a certain area. Tourism, the sex trade, very, very prevalent where high tourism locations are. Also, agriculture for labor trafficking. There's essentially 3 main types of trafficking. We're touching on one of the worst ones, which is sex trafficking. But there's also labor trafficking and there's indentured servitude, which I've dealt with all three here in this area.
And also, we have a lot of events. You can go outside, you can hear the Rolexes going on. We have the races coming up. There's the Pro Bowl that's happening in Orlando. We have the Super Bowl that's coming up. We have WrestleMania that's coming up. So we have a lot of sporting events and other events that bring in a lot of tourists as well.
And speaking of that, our office in Orlando, they had an operation for the Pro Bowl just this weekend, and 2 juveniles were recovered out of the I-Drive corridor. So it's very prevalent here.
So if we see sex trafficking or are afraid of it, what can we do?
Well, definitely, again, I work in the field. I wouldn't go in and rescue anyone. Contacting law enforcement, contacting the Department of Children and Families if it's a juvenile. I'm going to give you all the number to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. If you call that number, they can get it out to law enforcement to investigate. And that number is 888-373-7888.
And we say this, you're our eyes and ears out in public. We can't be everywhere. We're limited numbers. Even, we try to work together. Locally, I'm on a human exploitation task force where we investigate human smuggling, human trafficking, and child exploitation. But we're a limited number. We're investigators here locally, 4 in the Volusia County area. If you bring in Brevard, a couple more, for a region of over 1 million people. So it's happening a lot. The agencies that are involved in it here, where it's mainly Homeland Security, the Sheriff's Office, Daytona Beach PD is a big part of it, and the FBI is also involved in it. But we have limited numbers working these cases, and we can't be everywhere. So it's important that the public, you folks, keep your eyes open. And if you see something that doesn't feel right, report it. If you think something's going on that that doesn't look right, that person looks like he's controlling the other individual, be it boy or girl, something's going on, something doesn't feel right. There's different avenues of reporting it. The human trafficking, the national hotline, you can call it in. There's a number. You can also send an email. You can also, now they have a text platform. You can send tips in, and those tips go to them. They triage them, and then they disseminate it down to the different agencies in the local area that will respond and perform investigations. So we get them, and we take them very seriously, and we immediately respond. In DCF, very involved with the juveniles, and we all work together to try to eliminate this terrible scourge.
And one thing to add, I forgot to bring up the first service, but also if you see something suspicious on your child's phone or through their apps or online playing video games, predators will go online and try to seek out you. Again, report that to law enforcement to investigate. Right.
And if it's something that's immediate, that you feel somebody's in danger right now, it's definitely something you want to call 911. Don't approach the traffickers and the people involved. Don't put yourself in danger, because you're not only putting yourself, but you're also putting the victim in danger.
I talked with one of the people too, and the hard part is I talked to one of our folks after worship in the first service, and they were saying, you sit in a restaurant and you see someone, and maybe it's their uncle or something like that. And I think the sense part of it, from a Christian standpoint, I think we're given the gift of discernment, and when you don't feel like something's right, those are the things that I find are serious and really a reason to step out. When you don't feel good about a situation, right? So you know what I'm talking about.
But again, if it's involving an immediate danger to that person, that you believe that person's in immediate danger, call 911. Collect as much information as you can. If what they're wearing, what they look like, if they're driving a vehicle, if you get a license tag, report that information. Collect all that information, that intelligence, call it in. And then we react. They'll send out a unit. They'll locate them, pull them over, and the investigation will start. But don't put yourselves in harm's way, because you could get hurt, your family could get hurt, but so can that, the individual, and they're thinking that they try to tip you off or something. So the best thing is just keep your eyes open and report what you see.
So we kind of pride ourselves as a church in being serving to the community. That's what we do. And this is yet one untapped area for us. What can a church do to help out in this situation?
Being involved with youth, being involved with kids. We also, through our different ministries through the church, have been able to help trafficking survivors through Derbyshire Place, through the Thrift Boutique. So being involved can make a huge difference. Being someone that can be there for youth, have them be someone that they can talk to, pray, is something else. So any way that you feel comfortable that you are able to help any of us that are working with trafficking survivors, appreciate it.
Great. Any closing thoughts for either of you?
I always go back and this is a very dark topic. And I just wanted to say, Matthew 5:14, it's a dark world, be the light. That's what we can do.
And of course, our mission statement is to be a lighthouse to our community, and just to remember that. And this is I said in the first service and again in this service, I can't think of a time our sanctuary has been this quiet, but you understand the importance of it and see the need. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Jesus, for being with us today and sharing with us. Psalm 72:14 says, "From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight." And for that reason, that God-given reason, Christ came to earth and emptied himself and became like us to rescue us. Amen? Amen? Thank you. And Philippians 2:7 defines that. It says, "But he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born into human likeness and being found in human form." And that is what it was at the heart of what Jesus was thinking when he says in Luke 4:16 through 19. Now, this is that passage when he goes to his own hometown. Can you imagine going to your own hometown and standing up and saying, I'm here to help? Well, it says this, it says, "When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went into the synagogue on Sabbath day, and as is his custom, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.'" Well, brothers and sisters, Jesus has come to our hometown today. And the way Jesus brings good news to the poor, the way Jesus brings release to the captives, the way Jesus helps the oppressed is through you and me. That's the plan. Amen? And so today we live that out as it continues in Philippians 2:13. "For it is God who is at work in you, enabling you both to will and to work for his good pleasure." In other words, God is calling us to step forward. The USA is ranked one of the world's worst places for human trafficking. It's here. Florida, as we heard, is one of the top 3 states in our country. The reports of human trafficking.